Be recording now, so
Awesome.
we're ready to begin. What did you guys think of the first part of the book?
I really liked it. I thought that her writing was really interesting and that she was using a lot of narrative writing, kind of like we've been talking about with Newkirk. And the one thing that really stuck out to me was when she was talking about the girl who was talking about her dad being in jail and how the teacher kind of dismissed it. And for me, like, I guess I've had instances of students bringing things up in the middle of class and not really knowing how to respond. So that was something that really kind of stuck out to me.
And Jillian, I think you as a music teacher, I think that more often students are going to, say things off the cuff more with more of a open type of curriculum. Mm-hmm. Whereas I still get that too, especially in deep discussions of literature, but I think you get that more than I would get.
Yeah, I mean, and we talk a lot about emotions and music and stuff, so I think you're right. Like, there is more of a space for that. And I guess, like, I just want to make sure that I'm reacting in a way that's appropriate, that acknowledges these things, but I also don't want to embarrass anybody in front of a class or have other students say things that aren't appropriate. So
yeah, the little girl who, when she said her dad was a bully, and the first grade teacher responded in a way that where her whole body language changed. You know, to me, that I would never want a student to shut down like that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that even in elementary schools, it's much more likely for things like that to come up. Because Allison and Melanie, you teach in middle schools, and I know that I in middle school wouldn't have wanted to talk about any of those issues, but the kids in the elementary schools may not have been shut down like that yet, but situations like that lead to them continually being shut down, and then they don't want to share anymore. But I think in our classrooms, we need to make sure that we're encouraging that kind of sharing and conversation and making sure that the other students are accepting them.
For her to connect with her experiences, I think that underlying theme keeps coming into the book, and it's something where when you were reading those questions, put yourself in this place with your clothing and your transportation and your communication, and thinking, I don't know what I would do in a situation like that, and yet she has more of the life connections and can relate to that and can share that with her students in such a way where they can connect to her a lot easier, I think I would say.
Yeah, but even with that, there's still like the fear of like, how do you bring it up in a way that doesn't, like, I don't know, like you don't want to say like, oh, it's great to have somebody in jail, but you also want to validate that like that is a real part of their life. So it's kind of, I feel like it's a hard line to play because you don't want, you don't want to offend anybody, but you don't want to like encourage them necessarily either to follow in those footsteps.
Yeah, and one thing that I kind of wrote about too in our Google Doc was that, in the past, what I've done is kind of say, oh, I'm so sorry, and then in like a more private moment, try to talk with them. And I didn't know if that was I don't even know if that's the right approach or not, but that's kind of been my status quo for dealing with instances like this where they're blurting out, my stepdad killed my dog or whatever, like things that come out that are alarming or, to try and get to the bottom of what really they're talking about and if it was, if the instance is what I think it is or if it's maybe a little bit different from what they're actually saying, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I think this might be something that could be important to bring up like in our presentation, like maybe give a circumstance like this and then like how do you deal with it and talk about how it's important to validate what they're saying, but then also not putting your own prejudice in there on their situation.
Yeah, we could even read the section of the book out loud to the class and then ask them to discuss what they would do in that situation as the teacher.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Yeah.
Okay. I felt like our book title was Girls, but it's definitely been a lot more about social class and poverty than I expected. But I've
Yeah.
really enjoyed being able to read about that. Because
Yeah.
it's a big
I-
issue in the school I teach in. We're 76% low income. And so I definitely have been connecting to the kids in the story and connecting them to my students that I've had.
Yeah.
I think one of the underlying themes in this book, though, is the students themselves don't have a clear-cut definition of poverty. And we, even as a society, don't necessarily consider ourselves in a certain class when we look introspectively. You know, where the girls were talking and they were discussing the literature as to were the girls poor or not, and one girl said that they were because they only had crackers, and somebody else said no, they're not because they at least have crackers.
And the mom has a job,
Yeah,
so they can't
I
be
thought
poor.
that was huge.
I agree. I mean, you think about even the middle class too. You have teachers here at the bottom, and then you have, people who, make a little bit more money. I mean, there's different nuances to every social class, and I thought that was powerful too, Melanie.
I also think it was powerful just that she had that conversation with those second graders. She just said, okay, what is poor? And then they were able to discuss it. And I think that kids at that level are often underestimated in their ability to talk about controversial issues. But I think that the kids in the story did a really good, I mean, obviously it's not a story. It's a narrative of what really happened. But they did a really good job with it. And I think that most kids would. It's just the teacher has to give them the opportunity to discuss those issues.
I agree, and I think from a teacher's perspective that teachers also have to get over our own awkwardness. Like, I think me personally, I do. Like, getting over my own awkwardness of, okay, this feels weird because I feel uncomfortable that I have so much more privilege, maybe. But you have to kind of get over that to help your students feel more comfortable with where they are and their own. Because we're all educated women who have had opportunities to go to college and things. So it's not every one of our students is going to have that. So I don't know. I think for me, it's getting over my own awkwardness to be open to discussing more controversial issues like that.
Well, there's the fear too that like another student might say something that has like a complete different opinion and might be offensive, and then it's kind of like, you can't just be like, no, that's not the right opinion, but they also need to learn, like how to express themselves in, like, I don't know, ways that are more, I don't know how to put it, but
Respectful, maybe.
yeah. So like, I don't know, to be more tolerant of other people, but also to have open minds too.
And there's
Other
also
people are
a
in that
fine line with parents too. Especially in my community, I constantly feel like that there's eyes watching me, and so there's that fine line of ensuring that we're still getting the curriculum out there that we need to get out there, but still being open to the students and their diverse needs without stepping on toes. Too often, I think parents think that, especially in like a school district that I'm in, that things are supposed to be talked about at home, not in the school. And so you've got to balance that in a way where everybody feels like their opinions and their own narratives are validated. In my classroom, I think one of the best ways for me to actually open it up is to do those I'm from home and actually show my own. And throughout the year, I'm constantly showing writing that I've done that there's a passion behind it. There's a message to it, or something that the writing itself means something to me, because that whole fear of somebody else is going to criticize me. Somebody else, normally in front of a bunch of seventh graders, I'm perfectly fine. But when I put a writing that I'm working on in front of them and open it up for critique, it can be scary. Mm-hmm. And putting myself in their position and allowing them to say, you know what, this is scary. This is me talking about my life in front of you guys, and I'm still trying to balance to ensure that parents don't think I'm stepping on their toes.
Yeah, I think that it's also really, like you said, it's really important for teachers to have kids get to know them as well. one of the best connections I had with one of my students who has a particular behavior issue in my classroom last year was when I talked to him about the fact that his dad was getting remarried. Well, so was mine. And he was shocked by the fact that we could have the same issue going on in two completely different worlds. And we could have the same trepidations about, are we going to like the new stepmom or are we not? And all of that.
Yeah, I definitely think that, like, by, like what you're saying, Melanie and Kaylee, that, like, by opening up and sharing your vulnerability, like, allows other students to feel, like, safe. So I think that you guys are, like, dead on with that. And I'm wondering, though, too, like, if in the book this is going to open up to, like, more curriculum that you could use to show an acceptance of people from all, like, walks of life and social classes, or if it's just going to be share your story and engage in dialogue. That was something that I'm hoping she gives some, like, examples of, like, read stories like this, or, you know, some more curriculum stuff. So it's not just all yours. You know, it's not just that dialogue, which I think is important, but also some curriculum ideas. I don't know.
And I do a short story called Utzel and His Daughter Poverty, and it's from, I'd say, probably 1600s. And it's supposed to, it's more of a fable trying to teach that if you work hard and are not lazy, that you can build yourself up. But I'm starting to think that maybe this story is not quite what it needs to be. And the message, I love the message in it, and it's a time classic, but it's one of those media type Cinderella stories where everybody is happily ever after at the end, and that's not life.
I wonder if you could contrast it with a different text too.
And that's what I'm hoping to get out of this, is maybe that she will give some curriculum ideas, because as much as I actually enjoy reading this, and it's an easy read, and it's really it pulls at the heartstrings. I'd like to get more curriculum ideas and more, okay, now how can I take this and improve myself as a teacher instead of just be given the stories?
I think looking at the table of contents, she goes into critical literacy in the next few chapters. And then there's even 2 different chapters, 10 and 11, about reading and writing workshops specifically. So it looks like hopefully we'll get there.
Good.
But with that, I thought it was interesting, like, when he was talking about those girls and how the families wanted the mothers would say that they wanted the girls to go away somewhere because there weren't many jobs or whatever. But the author was saying, I hope they don't. Like, I hope they don't go away and get out of this. I hope they grow up to be, like, critical thinkers, and then they fight for the justice for them. And I thought because I think when I think of my students, I'm always like, oh, I hope they get away from this, they make this better life. And I don't think I ever really think about them fighting for the situation that they're in now and getting those services and stuff.
That's an excellent point, Allison.
Yeah, I thought about that too, and how there's a lot of discussion with, like, social justice movements in education, of, like, students going and getting educated and then coming back and, like, helping their old community. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, because I think as somebody, like, I moved from Michigan and I'm, like, in this very small town, and I'm kind of seen as an outsider, and I don't know, like, if I, like, was actually from the town that I'm teaching in now, like, would people be more, like, would there be an easier buy-in, or would it be, I just wonder these things, like, especially in some of these, like, really poor, poverty-ridden areas, if there was a teacher who had gone through their schools and came back and was, like, really making a difference. I don't know. I kind of thought about.
I mean, I am from Bloomington, but I didn't go specifically to the elementary school that I'm teaching at. And also, I went through District 87 schools, and I teach in Unit 5 now. And so I do sometimes relate to my students that I've grown up in the area, and I used to go to the library all the time, trying to get them to realize that they can go as well. but there's still that class divide, I think. And I try to relate to my students with, I mean, I think you can always find something that's going to relate to their lives in a similar way. And so maybe I didn't necessarily grow up in poverty, but my parents got divorced when I was 3, so I can usually pull something out of that to relate to them. And I think that being from the same community makes somewhat of a difference because you can talk about the same places, but I think the class divide is even bigger, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Well, I
How
think
long have we been recording for, Kaylee?
I think it's been about 15 minutes. I don't
Oh,
have like a
it doesn't
countdown on here, so I can't really tell.
It's been at least 20 minutes.
Okay.
Started right about 11:30, and it's 11:50.
Okay. All right. Well, let me check and make sure that it did record everything, and then I'll come back. You guys will be able to still see me while I'm checking. But all right, here we go.